Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. Gonna work on my timing on the countdown for tomorrow, but it is great to be with you here today and welcome back. I hope that your Thursday was outstanding and you accomplished everything you set your mind to. We got some business to attend to today. If we missed you this morning, we had a great session with the Supreme Court where we heard almost 3 hours of oral arguments, about 2.5. Going to be a close one on that one. Had some time to think about it. And we are concerned about Amy Coney Barrett and maybe even John Roberts. So a lot of the analysis on that has been 5-4, maybe going either way. So it's going to be a close call. But we went through all of that this morning. So if you're looking for that, check out the stream from about 6 hours ago. And if you're looking for just the analysis, skip to the end right before the chats, and you'll get the latest on what we covered there. But today, we got a bunch of other business to attend to, my friends. We're starting off with this one. You may have seen this just breaking just moments ago. And for some reason, my little thing is not working over here, so we'll just do it this way. We got this, as you can see. James Comey posted this on Instagram saying something like 8645, which is quite a concerning thing to post. Because that, of course, well, we know what that means. But a lot of reaction to this from James Comey. And even the White House is commenting on this. Meghan McCain was commenting on this. Taylor Budowich from the White House was saying, what the heck is the former FBI director doing posting about this? Why is he walking along the beach posting what absolutely is a threat towards the president? So hopefully the Secret Service is watching the show today. We got that. Then we're going to turn our attention to Dugan, because we got Backdoor Dugan, the judge out of Wisconsin. She had a bunch of activity in her case today. We'll give you the latest on this. You can see all of this is new, and I got all of the stuff queued up. Actually, this stuff hit yesterday too. Yesterday, we went through the motion to dismiss the case that she filed, saying she's above the law. She's got judicial immunity, and everybody can just eat it because she's the judge and she can help illegals by committing new crimes in her courtroom if she wants to. She could shoot somebody in the face if she wants to because she's the judge and she runs the country now, not anyone else. So we'll go through that. We got a lot of stuff queued up here. You can see joint motion for the protective order dropped and the proposed protective order. She also had her arraignment and her plea. Remember, she was already charged with the crime with a criminal complaint. Yesterday, we got the indictment. And so we'll go through a bunch of that. Then this wild situation that just popped out, you can see yesterday, it's just capturing some attention today. But this was a case out of New Mexico, District of New Mexico versus this person called Lopez Gonzalez. Any idea what their status in our country is? Illegal. Yeah, they came across. And they went onto a military base, and you probably have heard this development where the Trump administration is identifying plots of land and just saying, that's a military facility now. And so we're in charge of the jurisdiction. And so if you come across this land, you're on a military facility and we can charge you accordingly. Well, what has happened now is the judge dismissed those charges against the people who made their way onto the military base. This judge here, Gregory Warmuth, is the judge who said that that charge has to go away. And do you know why it is? Because the illegals get more due process and more presumption of innocence and more protections than anyone else does, especially American citizens. Well, we don't get anything anymore, of course. But now they're going to say they didn't know that it was a military base. There wasn't proper signage, and the mens rea, the guilty mind element, wasn't met for the charge. And so, of course, all the crimes against the illegals had to go away, have to get dismissed now. And defense attorneys everywhere are going, what? Right? Everybody learns. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, I didn't know what the speed limit was. Well, we don't really care if you know what the speed limit is or not, because none of that applies, is generally how this works. And what we're taking a look at right now, of course, is going to be a great stream. We're going to have a bunch of stuff cooking today, trying to figure out why my buttons aren't working over here. And I guess I'll have to figure that out later. But we got a great stream ahead. As you can see, we had a great stream this morning, and welcome aboard to new members. At the end of the show today, if you're a YouTube member, we're working out the kinks on YouTube members only after party edition. So at the end of the stream, if you're a YouTube member, go back to the chat. We have to start a new stream. So go back and join the members only stream for the after party and join us as we hang out for the final few minutes on the day. So that's the latest development there. Now, we got a bunch of business to attend to on the day. And so let's just hit this one briefly, very short story, and I'm sure it will develop even further. But this is a pretty big shocker. Shocking new post from the former FBI director, James Comey. You remember him as being the corrupt partisan who let Hillary Clinton do whatever she wanted and then rigged the FBI as he was leaving and as Trump was coming in to try to detour his entire first term and cause criminality and more problems for him throughout the remainder of his presidency. But what we see here is Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, posted about his father and said, here's a post from James Comey just calling casually for my dad to be unalived. What? Yeah, Comey posted this. 8647. Obviously, 47 is the president. That's President Trump, number 47. And from your days listening to Tupac and Biggie Smalls and East Side, West Side and all that stuff, 86 is elimination, unaliving somebody. And what Comey noted about this, cool shell formation on my beach walk. Wow. This dude is crazy, right? Former FBI director, cool shell formation. Like, he knows what it is. He's the FBI director. He knows what 86 means. Wild, right? So that is him endorsing that. And the reaction on this has obviously been, I think, pretty aggressive, as it should be. And we'll see what his explanation is for this. But it's a real post. This is his account right here. Went over there. He's got a trans people belong. Of course he does. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, that's great. So James Comey, and that's his book, FDR Drive, a crime novel. Don't get it. It's going to be terrible. So you can see he posted this right over there. Cool shell formation. And I guess he doesn't have any comments enabled, but he's trying to pitch his crap book. He's reading this on the beach as he's walking around. There's nobody else on that beach there, James. All right, we know what you're doing. Nobody else made that seashell symbol in the sand. You did that. Look, there's nobody even around here. Here's the evidence. James did it. He should be investigated for threats against the president. Now, a lot of other people are commenting on this. You can see the White House said, while President Trump is currently on an international trip to the Middle East, the former FBI director put out what clearly could be interpreted as a hit. So what if it's not just an observation? What if it's not he's walking along the beach? Oh, that's interesting. Wow, it's pretty serious, scandalous thing. Well, I'm just going to take a record photo of this so I can share it and chronicle it on my Instagram account for posterity's sake. All right, thanks, James. Just an observation. Maybe it's something like wishful thinking. Maybe it's James Comey thinking, maybe this would be great if that happened. Or maybe, as the White House is implying, it's a directive. It's an order. It's a hint, a nudge, a poke. Somebody do this, please. Deeply concerning to all of us at the White House and being taken seriously. Now, even Meghan McCain, right, who's no lover of Trump, says, I don't know how this could be interpreted as any other way but a threat against President Trump. James Comey should at the very least get a visit from the Secret Service. Also, is everyone mentally ill? Which is a great point. Absolutely crazy for the former FBI director to be posting that. 8647, what else could it possibly mean? We know what James Comey is intending to mean. We hope the Secret Service shows up there and has a conversation with him and he can explain it. Oh, he was a terrible FBI director. He's a moron, clearly. That's why he has all this stupid stuff on his post here, like these posts. He's got like 6 posts on here. So maybe he didn't know. He did a terrible job at running the country and the FBI. Maybe he just had no idea what it means. So that's James Comey. That's the Democratic Party. This is their ideology on display here. Eliminate, unalive the president, who's already had multiple attacks on his life, James. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. So that's James Comey. We'll see if he has a good explanation for it. Hopefully that does not happen. And the White House investigates why we have a former former FBI director who apparently is mentally ill. Does he have any other access or any other security credentials? Is he cut in on anything? Because he seems like he's insane and should be dealt with accordingly. All right, so that's the latest on James Comey. Now, let's get our update on Judge Dugan and what's happening here. Here is the latest. Yes. Judge Dugan entered a plea of not guilty. She now has been officially indicted. She got the criminal complaint filed against her by the FBI special agent. The grand jury then came out, doubled down on that, rubber stamped that puppy and said, oh yeah, that's a criminal charge there. There's probable cause for that. And she had her arraignment today, May 18th, 9 a.m. And we'll go through exactly what happened here. But here's the docket on the case. You know, this is filed in the Federal District Court on the Eastern District of Wisconsin. And we had a bunch of activity since the last time we were here. The motion to dismiss was filed by Judge Dugan. We covered that previously. And she's claiming judicial immunity, saying that it's in her courtroom. She was acting as an official act, kind of an argument, which was being made, parlayed off of the Trump immunity battle that we had during the last election and the last prosecutions, rather. So she's trying to gobble that one up and filed that. We read through that previously. Make sure you watch that if you missed it. But then we got a bunch of other filings. We have this joint motion for a protective order. So they're going to try to seal this puppy up. No evidence, no discovery. They don't want anybody else to see any of this stuff, both the prosecution and the defense. So Hannah Dugan wants to seal it up. And then we had a minute entry where she entered her plea of not guilty. We had some other orders, and we'll go through the latest because they gave us the next court dates and what's coming next on Backdoor Judge Dugan, who allowed an illegal alien to use her back door. Invited him to do it. Crazy. So what happened here, you can see, is this got filed into the court on behalf of both parties. Wrote this: here's a joint motion for an entry of a protective order. Don't want anybody seeing any evidence on this thing. They say, all right, guess what? The U.S. DOJ and Hannah Backdoor Dugan and by her attorneys are hereby moving for a protective order regulating the dissemination of discovery material in this case. Now, the indictment in this case charges the defendant with concealing an individual illegal alien from discovery or arrest and endeavoring to obstruct a federal proceeding by shoving him out the back door. Now, the discovery to be provided by the government in this case includes videos, photographs, reports containing personal identifying information of the third parties whose unrestricted dissemination could adversely affect the privacy interests of third parties. It's like, yeah, I get so tired of this crap. Okay, this is a courtroom. This is a public courtroom. Everything is recorded in there. Everything is on the record, accessible by the public. We should be able to see all of it, just as a matter of course. Now, I don't want to see anything about the victims that this illegal alien beat and strangled. 3 of them who were sitting in the courtroom. I'm not interested in that. We can blur the faces or protect the IDs of the security guards and things like that. That's fine. We want to see Backdoor Dugan rushing the illegal, and her lawyer, who, by the way, is apparently escaped any culpability thus far for being a co-conspirator in this crime. Defense attorney. Why can't we see any of it? Now, the parties work together to draft a proposed protective order, even the DOJ's in on it, saying that the dissemination of the discovery in this matter can only be used for the litigation of this case, which is, this is standard stuff. So, it's like it's not really for public enjoyment when somebody's charged with a crime. But she's charged as a private person, right? She's a judge. She happens to be a judge. But just like any other private person who's being charged with a crime, you don't get carte blanche access to everything. But when it's a judge, maybe we should, because this involves her operation as the judge and the exploitation of her position of power. Now, the parties jointly moved the court for entry of an order that locks the case down. And of course, the judge is going to grant it. So here is what the proposed order was. We'll fast forward through that because we'll see what the judge actually signed, which looks like this. This is what the judge put her signature on. You can see sign here by Nancy Joseph, U.S. Magistrate Judge out of Wisconsin. She says, all right, here's the deal. The U.S. here by everybody, they've jointly approved and moved for this proceeding and this protective order, saying all of the materials now, the court orders the following. It is approved. All materials provided by the U.S. government, which would include the videos, the photographs, and all that stuff, are now subject to this. Okay, everything in preparation of or connection to this case now protected. And it does not limit Backdoor Dugan or her lawyers from disclosing information she already possessed that may have already been included in the government's discovery. Okay, so it's if she already had it and she gave it to them, that's hers. She can do what she wants with it. The defense may also host the government's discovery on e-discovery platforms or with other service providers as necessary for the review. So this is where we'll store it. And the parties shall not disclose the materials directly or indirectly to any other people except people who are part of this litigation. Now, the materials may be used by the defendant and her counsel solely in connection with the defense of this case, no other purposes, no other proceedings without further order. The defendant and the counsel may only disclose those materials to those employed by the defense. And this mirrors a lot of the same stuff we saw that was, on with Trump. And by the way, though, Trump wanted to communicate a lot of it, right? A lot of these protective orders were to stop Trump from communicating this stuff out because they wanted to prosecute him in the dark of night, in the gutter of Washington, D.C. Now, the defendant and her counsel shall not copy, reproduce materials except to provide copies of materials in connection with the case. Same is true for everyone else. And the defendant and her counsel, as well as other authorized persons, shall not disclose any of this. Everything, even copies, shall be treated as originals. Before disclosing the materials to anybody, defense counsel must provide the authorized person with a copy of this order, right? So they know they got to comply. And after this is concluded, this case, all of the materials can be disposed of in one of three ways. Destroy it, give it back to the government, give it back to the defense attorneys. The restrictions here don't apply to materials that become a part of the public record, doesn't apply to anything that's introduced at trial or at evidentiary hearings. Personal identifying information shall be redacted if the discovery is filed with the court. And if it's necessary for the court to review this stuff, let me know. You can file it under seal. Nothing contained in this order prevents any other relief. Signed here by Nancy Joseph, the U.S. Magistrate Judge. So all that is now pretty standard stuff. A lot of the same things we saw with Trump. The difference here, I think, she probably does not want to talk about it because it's going to be damning for her once you see her shooing these people out her back door. But then in Trump's case, he wanted to talk a lot about it, and so did we. And they were, I think, trying to limit his ability to discuss it in the middle of a presidential election when it's kind of the most important issue, or one of them at least. Now, Judge Dugan entered a plea of not guilty, and here is what that looked like in the court today. You see, this is an arraignment and plea minutes form. Bunch of check boxes in here. These proceedings are usually very quick. You can see this was 4 minutes long. Go in, parties announce, make sure she understands the nature of the charges, make sure she's got counsel, and set some dates. Here's what happened. So, U.S. of America versus Hannah C. Dugan, backdoor judge, arraignment and plea. On behalf of the U.S. government, Richard Frawling. On behalf of Backdoor Dugan, a bunch of attorneys. And she hired a bunch of people. You remember a whole list of them that we covered previously. Biskubik, Luxak, and Mansnika, 3 attorneys were all there. Probation officer was there. No interpreter needed. And it began. Now, we've got a speedy trial date, July 22nd. They set some other dates. Final pre-trial conference, July 9th. Jury trial date, July 21st. 1 week trial, pretty simple, would be the estimate. Gave us some other responses and due dates in June. So she got advised of her rights. She got advised of the charges, the nature of the 2 charges. She got a copy of the indictment. She entered a plea of not guilty. And she's entitled, like to anybody, with the presumption of innocence, but we know what she did. And expanded discovery policy applies. The government is going to disclose the grand jury materials 1 day before the trial, and none of the other items are there. They give us some notes. They advise her of the maximum penalties. You understand the nature of charges? Yeah. You got a copy of the indictment? Yeah. Your attorney explained them to you? Yeah. You're a judge. You know what you're doing? Yeah. Are you sure? You have a brain in there? Pretty sure. All right. Well, we'll just take your word for it. So you understand count 1 has a maximum penalty of 1 year in prison, $100,000 fine, 1 year supervised release, and a $25 special assessment. You understand that? Yes. And you understand that count 2, it's much more serious, has a maximum 5 years imprisonment, $250,000 fine, 3 years supervised release, and a $100 special assessment. You understand that? Yes, I do. All right, what's the status of the case? Your Honor, this is the DOJ speaking. Your Honor, we have a pending motion for a protective order. Of course, we just read that. That was approved. We're going to roll out the discovery once that's ruled on. So as soon as you let us know that they're not going to disclose any of this stuff, we'll send it over to them. Now, there are a small number of video excerpts that we did give them yesterday due to an agreement amongst the parties. We said, yeah, we'll give you the videos of her shoving them out the back door, and we gave it to them. All right. Anything else? How about you from the defense? Your Honor, the defense requests a waiver of the judge's appearance at any of the upcoming scheduling matters. So when we have to come back for court, she doesn't need to be here. Attorneys will be here for her. Is that okay? And we would also like to alert Judge Adelman to the fact that the parties have already discussed jury selection issues and a jury questionnaire that parties would jointly submit to the court. Wow, they're like, let's have a trial like now. So they're moving fast. Court says, okay, great. Well, jury, well. Judge says, all right, well, we're going to have scheduling conferences on all this. This is just a different judge in front of Judge Joseph later. This is in front of Stephen Dries, the presiding judge. Wow, presiding sat in on this one. Then came in and said, well, all right, scheduling conferences are going to be back before another judge, Judge Joseph. And we normally have just counsel there anyway. So we normally don't have the defendants there. So we'll just waive her presence for that. No problem. Any waiver, though, for matters that require the defendant's presence, don't ask me about that, okay? Ask the case assigned judge, talk to Judge Joseph about that. But as far as the policy is here from this court, I'm the presiding judge, so here's the deal. For this next scheduling conference, we don't need to see you there. And of course, bond as previously set, which I think was just on her own recognizance. And it's ordered that the court orders the government give all exculpatory information, right? This is the Brady case. So the government has a duty to go find stuff. If it's evidence that is tending to support your claims of innocence or show that you're innocent, and the government has it in its possession, they got to give it to you. If you don't comply with that, that could result in the dismissal of the charges. So all of that coming out, Eastern District of Wisconsin, and this is the final pretrial order that schedules the next dates, not to be confused with a court date called a final pretrial conference. This is a pretrial order from the judge telling us, here are the deadlines. All motions together with all supporting documents must be filed by May 30th, so coming up here at the end of the month. Opposing memo by June 9th, any replies by June 16th. File your motions separately. Don't stack a bunch of them in there. Follow the rules on the length. There aren't any co-defendants. If you want an evidentiary hearing, let me know. And all of the rest of it is just boilerplate stuff. All motions for bail, reduction of all these things. Here are the addresses signed by Nancy Joseph, right? So basically just a form document, just scheduling some dates, saying comply with the local rules. And we'll see you back. So we've got some deadlines here. Judge Dugan entering a plea of not guilty. The case getting sealed up as per usual. We'll keep our eye on this one. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, now let's carry on into this other story, which is just amazing from this judge out of New Mexico. Here's the latest. Criminal charges dismissed against illegal aliens who broke into the country, but not just any portion of the country. They actually came onto military bases. You may recall the story about the Trump administration redesignating certain plots of land as military facilities and saying, we're in charge of those now. So if the states don't want to handle it, we'll handle it. Well, what happened here out of the District of New Mexico is this judge got a case where an illegal person was charged with a crime for breaking that law. Judge Gregory B. Warmuth, Chief U.S. Magistrate Judge out in New Mexico. And the judge has said because the illegal alien didn't know they were breaking the law, charge has to be dismissed. And it's not only going to apply to this one person because a bunch of people have been charged with the same crime out of New Mexico. And so the presumption is all the charges everywhere have to be dismissed. So here is what this judge wrote, said the following. The United States has filed a criminal complaint against this defendant called Alicia Lopez Gonzalez. 3 misdemeanor crimes this person got charged with. Entry without inspection, coming into the U.S. illegally, violation of a security regulation, in violation of U.S. code, and entering a military property, right? So 3 different crimes. Now, the court has sworn the agent to the factual allegations of the complaint, and we've conducted an initial appearance. And the public defender came in, and for the purposes of this case, moved orally for a dismissal. All right, so just came in, said, Your Honor, my client had no idea that this was a military facility and didn't know what the law was. And so I moved to dismiss this, right? So it's not in writing, it's orally, which is like so underhanded. It's, come on, at least write it down. Oral motion to dismiss for all such charges on the docket. All right, so that's going to be not just this case for this one illegal. It's going to be for all of the illegals for all of the charges. Now, even if a motion had not been made, this judge explains, anyone arrested for a crime without formal process, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor, is entitled to review of probable cause, right? And you got to have probable cause before you charge somebody with a crime, and the judge can't just allow a case to go on where there's clearly no probable cause. So he's saying, I have some basis to hear this and make a decision. Says this review requires that the court determine that the facts alleged in the complaint establish probable cause to believe there was a crime, right? I got to at least reach that level. And having concluded its probable cause review in this case, check it out, the court finds that the facts alleged in this complaint do not establish probable cause for either of these 2 charges, the 797 charge and the 1382 charge, okay? So we just saw 3 charges. 2 of them are going to get dismissed by the judge because the illegals didn't know any better. So as we talk about here, they keep screeching about due process and how illegals deserve hearings. And I guess they want them to have the presumption of innocence and more. But now they get even more benefits than you. Okay, they can drive around illegally and not have a license. They don't get their cars impounded or get cited for driving on a suspended license or arrested for that, like in some states. He could be human trafficking. FBI lets him go. No insurance, no problem. Have a nice trip. Be safe. Slow down. No big deal. You wouldn't get any of those benefits. You beat your spouse twice, causing bruises and threatening her kids and all of that. Cops come and arrest you. She calls the cops. They don't show up. She goes into court a couple times. No one cares. So it's that same type of stuff that happens over and over again. And then they get hearings on their removability. They want another one. They get adjudicated. 2 courts find that they're MS-13 gangbangers and that their labels are appropriate. They want another hearings. They want to have a whole criminal hearing with a jury and all of it. And now you try, or anybody you've ever known who's ever been charged with a crime or been criminal adjacent to somebody who's been charged with a crime, you getting charged with a speeding ticket, tell the cop, I didn't know. I didn't know it dropped from 65 to 45. This is a speed trap, you maniacs. You're trying to abuse your citizenry here. Pay your ticket, you peasant. You want to get arrested? You better watch your mouth to me, punk, or I'm going to arrest you. You're an illegal, though. You waddle onto a military facility, and the judge dismisses the charges against you. Absolutely outstanding, right? Now, the people apparently will still be held in custody or still be subject to removal because the judge didn't get rid of the other charge, which is entry without inspection. So one of the charges will remain. But here is what this judge will explain from New Mexico, because illegal aliens have way more protections than you do. Ignorance of the law is a joke. Okay, you try that anywhere anywhere in the country if you want, and you'll just get laughed out of court unless you're an illegal alien in New Mexico. And then this judge says, well, they have to know, like did they have any idea? Here, we'll get to it. It says, now, indeed, the review is required within 48 hours of request. The court took longer to finish the review in this case, and we concluded there's no probable cause. The court has considered a bunch of stuff. They say the court doesn't need to address every argument that the United States brings. Given its remarkable tone and content, some points must be made. They say, incredibly, this histrionic filing, they're shredding the DOJ, is in response to the court's order to brief a legal question about a criminal charge, right? So the prosecutors must have flipped on the judge. Histrionic? You're going to come in here and screech at me? He says the United States made no timely objection to my order requiring briefing, And the Trump administration filed its brief before apparently realizing days later that the mere request for a briefing was an improper exercise of the court's authority. And so according to the government, the order was in error because it was issued without any prompting from any party, right? The judge just made it up. However, as noted, and as the government must be aware, this court has a sua sponte obligation, okay? So this is the judge. The judge is getting scolded by the prosecution for raising this question. What are you digging into this probable cause argument? Nobody even raised that here. So you're on your own sua sponte questioning the DOJ's good faith basis that there's probable cause here. The judge is just like, actually, I think there's not because he doesn't like what's happening. Now, the judge is saying, I can do that, right? What, are you kidding me? I have to do a probable cause review on anything. And this court has an independent obligation to determine if any guilty plea satisfies the elements of the crime. Right? In other words, like nobody's come and asked for the judge to dismiss all of this, to dismiss all of this stuff. But the judge is just going to do it. Thus, for both probable cause and my other obligations, this is essential. The court just simply wanted to provide the government and the defense an opportunity to weigh in on that analysis. And regardless, the government says that this briefing would lead to an improper advisory opinion. Okay, nobody came to this judge and said, can you please dismiss all the charges against all the illegals based on this argument? He just did it on his own. And he says it's not an advisory opinion. It should be clear from the order. This is my legal analysis to this case. And the briefing order was not filed. And I had to fill, the judge writes, my probable cause review because you're invoking military trespass statutes. And this attempt at efficiency, just to try to resolve all of this and dismiss all these charges now, is not a constitutional error. I'm allowed to do that. This conclusion is particularly true when the factual allegations in the complaints are virtually identical with other military trespass that is charged across hundreds of cases, right? They designated this military facility and they said, if you come across, we're going to charge you with these crimes. Now, while the court appreciates the government's newfound concerns about the facts of the case, the government's, quote, cut and paste approach to these allegations is contained in every criminal complaint charging these crimes everywhere. So finally, the government says, you can't require us to brief these things. And even assuming that the case law about challenging indictments would not have passed the review of a grand jury, it'd have no bearing on what I can do here. And so the judge, right, he's responding to the prosecution saying, who the hell do you think you are? You can't just pick this up and dismiss this case. No one's even asking for it. And the judge says, oh, yes, I can. And so 2 charges are now dismissed without prejudice. And as you're going to see, meaning they could be refiled, but they won't because the judge found that they had no notice, at least until that issue is resolved. So here's what the judge says, okay? Why do these illegals get their criminal charges dismissed? Because they were ignorant of the law, but you don't. Here's what the judge says. This statute makes it a crime. 797, to willfully violate any defense property security regulation. Willfully, right? They're going to say, oh, see, they didn't willfully do that. Now, in this case, the illegal is charged with violating a regulation that was promulgated at Fort Huachuca, prohibiting entry into the National Defense Area. There's a regulation there. They created it out of the Roosevelt Reservation. They said, guess what? Now it's illegal. Now, under these circumstances, outside of mens rea, and mens rea, recall, in criminal law, there's generally 2 main components to a criminal charge. There's also elements of a crime, but there's 2 main components. Zooming out on this, which is you got to have a guilty mind, so a mental state, which is known as the mens rea, seen there, and you also have to have an actus reus, which is an act, like a physical act. So you wanted to do the thing, and then you did the thing. So like premeditated unaliving, like you thought about it, you planned it, and then you did it. There's kind of 2 components to it. So if you're going to willfully enter an area that you're not supposed to enter, the willfulness kind of implies you kind of know that you're not supposed to go there, is going to be the argument. They say that this is a lawfully regulated regulation, prevents unauthorized entry, and that their entry was unauthorized. And so in order for this to be valid, The defendant must willfully violate the regulation. And so willfully is the standard. And the illegals didn't know it was a military base. So the public defender came in, and at the initial appearance, he said, Your Honor, my client didn't willfully violate anything. Plainly requires knowledge of the security regulation at issue and an act in defiance of that regulation for some nefarious purpose. Saying my client didn't act with nefarious purpose. There was no defiance of that regulation. They're just walking across the border. They're just there on a leisurely stroll. Put another way, they argue that not only does the term willful unambiguously require a culpable mental state, but that mental state must be specifically directed towards committing a defense violation, right? There's no citation for this proposition, and it contradicts the Supreme Court definition of willfulness. Now, the primary case for willfulness is this other case. The court said, well, it's a word of many meanings. It can mean a bunch of things. That's why it's everywhere. Now, one could conclude that acting with knowledge that one's conduct is unlawful means that a defendant must indeed know the law. But the Supreme Court rejected that. The Supreme Court explained in a statutory willfulness requirement, it does not ordinarily carve out an exception to the traditional rule that ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? So there you go. That is the standard traditional rule, as I mentioned. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And willfulness doesn't excuse you. Well, I didn't intentionally do that thing. And knowing it was illegal, well, you did it. And you knew you were doing that thing. That's enough. Knowledge that the conduct is unlawful is all that is required. Knowledge that it's unlawful, right? So is what they're going to say there. Now, the only exception to that traditional rule involves, and we're going to see where this goes, but it's broader than that, right? Or that's like using the speeding example. You didn't understand the specifics of the speed limit, but you know that speeding is unlawful. Okay, well, yes. Well, what do you know what the speed limit is? No, I thought it was 65. No, it's 45. Well, I didn't know that. Well, that's too bad. Do you know that going 65 into 45 is illegal? Yeah. There you go. Now, but you know that's illegal. Got it. Now, involves highly technical statutes, and this can be very difficult to parse through. Now, this court does not find that the statute here would fit within this exception. Notwithstanding the fact that the prerequisites to the crime, which are military property with a security regulation, they say that may be legally intricate, but the crime simply outlaws trespass on property that's administered by the military. Not only is this crime straightforward, its application along the borders where illegals are coming in does not risk ensnaring individuals engaged in apparently innocent conduct. And so therefore, this court concludes that to establish a willful violation of a security regulation, the government need not show knowledge of the regulation, but only that knowledge of the conduct, that the conduct is unlawful. Okay, so you don't have to prove that this is illegal, like there was a sign there that they saw, or they got a pamphlet. Did you see that sign? Yes. And you disregarded it? Yes. Okay, only now we can charge you. But now it's a lower standard, which again, the government's going to fail. Only that the conduct is unlawful. Now, the U.S. argues that this knowledge is shown, saying they entered the country. The act alone and their walking is a volitional act. They willfully brought themselves into the country knowing that that conduct is illegal. How or why or what specific geography they were on doesn't matter. Just like your thought about the speed limit doesn't matter. In response, the federal public defender says the United States has failed to cite any cases for which the proposition is that the general intent to commit a completed crime can form the basis of willfulness or mens rea for trespassing. Now, having reviewed the cases, the judge says, this court agrees with the United States, in fact, not the public defender. Saying first, the court finds no authority in support of the public defender and his case here. No discussion about knowledge, about specific intent crimes and more. And Brian, they also lose that one there. And so consequently, the unlawfulness of illegal entry is reasonably related to the crime of military trespass. So it's like you knew you were entering the country illegally. And it is related to military trespass because it's another illegal entry. However, the conclusion that the illegal's knowledge of unlawfully entering the United States may be sufficient to establish conduct, but it doesn't end the mens rea inquiry. Whether and how the guilty mind, whether and how a criminal statute requires the government to prove the guilty mind of a defendant is a question of congressional intent. And the presumption of scienter is generally applied to all but a statute's jurisdictional element. So it's sort of the knowledge component, what's happening in a person's brain. Now, elements do not describe the evil Congress seeks to prevent, but instead the authority the government has to regulate the conduct. A lot of elements here, and together these elements establish the basis for the charge. Now, those elements are the law, right? So again, you got mens rea, actus reus, and then there are elements, like think of them like checkboxes that will establish whether that exists or not. Now, that leaves the two final elements of the crime. Did this person enter the military base, and whether the defendant's entry was unauthorized? So we're going to apply that to those acts, the guilty willfulness to those other elements. So think of it like a guilty mind for different subcomponents. The court will apply the statute's willfully mens rea requirement to both of these elements. So like, did they know it was unauthorized on the military base? Says Congress intended the government to establish that the defendant knew he violated that section of the law. And so the intent to illegally enter is a violation of one portion of the law, but that knowledge is not the only requirement of willfully in the mens rea. It requires like another checkbox. So this court again turns to what willfulness means. And there's an and here. In short, to establish willfulness, the government must show knowledge of the facts that constitute the offense and knowledge that the conduct is unlawful. And while the government, Trump's allegations in this case may satisfy the requirement of understanding, they fail to establish knowledge of the facts that constitute the offense. Now, as stated above, the government must show that this illegal entered the military base and that it was unauthorized. And knowledge of that fact, of the facts that constitute that offense, includes knowledge that they've entered a military base, right? So in other words, the idea that they didn't know they were entering a military base. And so they didn't have the guilty mind to enter a military base illegally. They just thought, oh, just walking across the desert. Requiring knowledge of the entry, and this judge is like really getting into the weeds on this just to make sure he can make this happen. Requiring knowledge of the entry is also consistent with congressional intent that the regulation shall be posted in conspicuous and appropriate places. Wow, I guess we got to install more billboards at the border saying, this is illegal. Well, they didn't know. It's not conspicuous enough because they just walked onto the military base. Like this is like there's not enough signs there for them to know that they're on illegal land. Relevant to that knowledge, the criminal complaint says there were signs posted in English and Spanish. They said this is a restricted area. The judge doesn't care. But the U.S. concedes that, yeah, it's 180 miles of difficult and mountainous terrain. Not enough signs. So illegal alien criminal charges for invading a military base illegally, they're dismissed because you didn't put up a sign for the illegals. That's how much protection they get in America. You will get a speeding ticket when there are no signs and when they change the signs to entrap you. Okay? What a country this is, I'll tell you. Says, consequently, the mere fact that some signs were posted, it's no basis. You can't show that they saw this or the relevant signs. And relevant facts on this matter, I want to know. Were there words on the signs? How big were the signs? What was the height of the signs? What was the density of the signage? Was it every 1 mile or every 10 miles? Evidence regarding how close this illegal alien was to a sign so that they know that this is illegal. This is insane. And lighting conditions at the relevant time. Oh my goodness. Do you have lights on those signs so the illegals can read to know that they're coming into our country illegally? Because if you don't have lights on those signs, then how would they know? And so all of their crimes are dismissed. They can do whatever they want in this country. Beyond the reference to the signage, the United States provides no facts that could reasonably conclude that they knew that he was entering a military base. And so since these illegals are just, dumb, I guess, like, ¿dónde estás? No, lo siento. ¿Qué pasa? They have no idea where the hell they are. And then suddenly, no criminal charges, because ignorance of the law for illegals is perfectly okay, but not for you. The criminal complaint fails to establish probable cause that they knew that they were entering a military base, and like they knew it was a military base. And as the court has held that knowledge is essential, charges can't be brought, and so they must be dismissed. Incredible. The statute, another statute, right? So why the second charge is going to be dismissed, since illegals are better than you. The statute makes it a crime to go to any military reservation for the basic purpose prohibited by law or lawful regulation. Now, the basic elements of the crime are not hidden. It goes upon a military reservation for any unlawful purpose. Now, both the United States, the judge says, and the federal public defender, they spend a lot of time on the second element. So we'll start there. The court says that there are two categories of violations here. First, an illegal can go upon the military property for the purpose that is unlawful, for separate from the entry itself. Or second, an illegal can violate the same paragraph by going upon without authorization. Now, in such a case, the unauthorized entry itself can provide the unlawful purpose. Like, entry alone is an unlawful purpose. You can't just go and stand there even if you want to. Like, the unlawful purpose doesn't have to be to steal classified documents. It's just to be there. Now, the United States says that this illegal's case falls into the first category. And under this theory, this illegal entered the military property for the purpose of entering the United States in violation of the law. Notwithstanding the arguments by the public defender, this court broadly agrees on that point. Now, as alleged in the criminal complaint, the military, the base that was entered by the defendant, is contiguous and parallel with the international border between the U.S. and Mexico. And the complaint further alleges that the defendant entered the base in the process of illegally entering the U.S. at a place quite distant from the nearest port of entry. Oh, I had to walk far. Yeah. Saying, for the purposes of probable cause, it's also reasonable to conclude that this illegal was intending to elude any examination by entering in the location he chose. Yeah, the judge is like, yeah, no, he absolutely, he's trying to enter the country illegally. So I guess you're going to dismiss his charges? Answer, yes, they will. Under these circumstances, the complaint establishes probable cause to believe that the entry and presence in the military base was for an unlawful purpose. So that's met. So then the court turns to the first element. What does goes upon the military reservation mean? So, well, the law says there's really no comprehensive mens rea requirement inside of that law, but the statute does contain a specific intent requirement that adds to that. Like, I intended specifically to do that thing, which is an element of the crime. It shall be unlawful for any person to intentionally possess with the intent to distribute a controlled substance. So, as an example. Now, thus the court must first determine whether there is any requirement with respect to the goes upon element, like this knowledge requirement. The United States argues that no, the specific intent is met by going onto the land. You don't need to show that there was knowledge about it being a military base. Now, as quoted above, the Supreme Court said, we have to presume that Congress meant what it says essentially, and so we presume it is knowledge sufficient to make them responsible for their conduct. And the presumption says, even when Congress does not apply any scienter to the statutory text or the jurisdictional elements, we have a presumption. And so certainly the sole actus reus of this crime, going upon the military, is not a mere jurisdictional element. And so the presumption of scienter applies. This general presumption is bolstered by the fact that entry, aka goes upon, is the only act elementally required in this crime. So goes upon, like the actus reus is so small, the act, that we can presume that there's more mental components that need to be met. By their nature, military reservations are generally obvious and well marked. But in many places, public roads might count. And so individuals could enter military property without being aware that they crossed a meaningful boundary. If a person were driving alone on a road, intending to commit a crime in the next town, they'd be guilty of a crime by the government's logic. In fact, they would be guilty even if they never committed a crime, if they never engaged in any knowingly culpable conduct. The absurdity of their result says Congress only intended to criminalize going upon if it was done knowingly. So the illegal going onto the base, which was published, like this was publicized, everybody knows we're fortifying the border, didn't have enough notice, and they get their case dismissed, their charges dismissed. The United States says no. The unlawful purpose is enough. That is knowledge. They know that there's a bad reason for them to cross the border. It's illegal. The United States is correct, though, but as to the second element, but knowledge that they were specifically or generally prohibited is not the only element. There's another element. 3 elements must be established: that the illegal knew they were prohibited from entering the base, they intentionally entered the base, they knew they were prohibited from entering, like all those 3 things. So the judge is now essentially adding some elements in there and saying they didn't meet them. Unsurprisingly, other cases where these other were upheld is where they knew they entered the military property, they knew they were prohibited from doing so. And so if you didn't require knowledge, you could charge anybody who just bumped onto the military base. And so this undermines your conclusion, and the law should be tighter so that innocent people aren't ensnared under this charge. Now, for the same reasons, the criminal complaint fails to establish probable cause to believe that they knew that they were entering a military base. And so since there's no probable cause, those other 2 charges are dismissed. And so for the foregoing reasons, the court finds that the factual allegations charging all these illegals with crimes fails to establish probable cause of these 2 charges, Section 797 and 1382. And so therefore, the court dismisses those charges. Signed off on here by Gregory B. Warmuth, the judge in New Mexico. So as we've talked about, illegal aliens, they get almost like it's a premium version of America. They get total freedom to enter in illegally, do whatever they want here, beat their spouses, traffic humans, traffic drugs, exist as gangbangers, do whatever they want. And even when they go on military bases, they just say, I don't know what I'm doing. I just happened to be here, just bumping on, just kind of got lost in an alley somewhere. And when our own government unequivocally, with notice, conspicuously to everybody says we're militarizing our border, don't come. There's advertisements all over the place. They're running cable commercials. Don't cross our border. Hegseth talks about we're militarizing the whole thing. It's not enough for this judge. They have to have signs, and the signs have to be lit 24/7. Otherwise, these poor illegals can't read, and they're going to have the difficult time invading our country without proper notice. So we've got obviously judges who are working themselves into an outcome. Trump will be appealing this, no doubt about this. And we're excited to see where this case goes, because this type of behavior from the judge, I think, is undermining the legitimacy of the court, of course, but it's antithetical to the standard practice, right? Generally, prosecutions and the government are given the benefit of the doubt on these charges. For this judge to come out on his own, wake up one morning, and sua sponte decide to delete charges for essentially everybody in this jurisdiction is inappropriate, and hopefully we see the courts of appeals rectify this in due time. Thank you for subscribing and joining as our coverage here continues. All right, my friends. Well, that is gonna, we got one more just very short update. I forgot. One more very short update, and then we're going to hear from you. But this was another interesting story. A scandal afoot. Big Pharma rigged the last election, not the last one, the one before that. In 2020, we're familiar with this. We see the House GOP came out, posted this on the interweb saying, huge news. New information suggests that senior executives from that one pharma company conspired to delay the jab's clinical testing to influence the election. And remember, We talked about this a lot. Prior to the election, when Trump was in power in 2020, we had the COVID death counter scoreboard every day. CNN's like 800,000 dead, 819,000 dead, 850,000 dead every day. Scoreboard, whatever the numbers were. Trump was racing with Operation Warp Speed to get all this done. They were super close to it. Soon as that election was over, they flipped the scoreboard. Scoreboard went to the green counter. They released the jab. Everybody got number of jabs administered. Kamala Harris got one. Joe Biden, all over the place, got them, allegedly. And they rigged that process so that they could push the jabs until after the election, because they knew if Operation Warp Speed was successful, it would have brought a lot of relief to people. Trump would have been able to declare victory, and maybe the election would have gone the other way. Now, here's what the GOP says. One executive was so scared about this being investigated, he asked to be relocated to Canada. Massive scandal, says the House Judiciary GOP, courtesy of Jim Jordan. Now, here is the full letter. They released the full thing. It is a short one, but I'll share it with you today. Here is what it says. This one went over to the CEO of the Pfizer company, Albert Bourla, telling us from May 15th from the Committee on the Judiciary, we got Jim Jordan writing, chairman, saying, all right, Mr. CEO. Dear Bourla, on March 26th, the Wall Street Journal reported that authorities were in possession of information that originated from a former senior Pfizer executive related to whether Pfizer sat on positive results of clinical trials of its jab campaign so as to influence the presidential election. Whoa, Wall Street Journal posted about that in March. And Jordan said, the Journal identified this person called Dr. Philip Dormitzer as the former Pfizer executive and reported that he disclosed this information to his current employer called GSK in late 2024 following Trump's re-election. So in response to these allegations on April 9th, earlier this year, the committee, Jim Jordan and the judiciary, wrote to GSK requesting further information about those allegations. GSK responded on April 16th. In its letter back to Congress, they said the following. Dear Jim, thanks for your letter. In November 2024, shortly after the election of Trump, Dr. Dormitzer approached a representative from the GSK Human Resources team to speak about a potential relocation abroad. This guy's like, I got to get the hell out of here. As a Human Resources representative recalls, in their meeting, Dr. Dormitzer was visibly upset. He's like, Trump won. I'm done. I'm totally screwed. He requested that he be relocated to Canada due to concerns that he's going to be investigated by the upcoming Trump administration over his role in developing the Pfizer jab. According to the Human Resources rep, when asked what prompted his request, Dr. Dormitzer made a comment to the effect of, let's just say it wasn't a coincidence, okay? The timing of the jab. Not a coincidence at all. GSK further informed the committee then that Dr. Dormitzer had told GSK employees that in late 2020, the three senior people in Pfizer R&D were involved in a decision to deliberately slow down clinical testing so that it would not be complete prior to the results of the election, because they're scammers. GSK alleged that Dr. Dormitzer was clear that this was not a situation of delaying disclosure of completed results, but it was slowing down the results before disclosure became necessary. And so, remember, these were the same people that were screeching to everybody, take those jabs, or you're going to kill everyone. You're going to kill everybody. So they're going to delay these things? If these are life-saving, pharmaceuticals, as they kept lecturing us that they were, if they were going to stop the spread and all that crap, never resulted in that. But if that was the claim, how are they going to sleep at night? Killing hundreds of thousands of people by delaying this stuff. They're basically murderers. Slowing down this delicious nectar that you should have 15 boosters with. Unbelievable. Murderers. So Jim Jordan said this new information appears to suggest that Dr. Dormitzer and other senior Pfizer executives conspired to withhold this public health information to influence the 2020 election. Obviously, we watched it happen. It's like we didn't know it was happening behind the scenes, but right after the election was over, like that December, Joe Biden's getting jabbed up. Due to the seriousness of these allegations, the committee is compelled to request the following information, and we want it now. All documents and communications, including but not limited to emails, texts, meeting notes between or among Pfizer employees or representatives referring to this clinical testing from March 1st, 2020, all the way up to today. All documents and communications amongst Pfizer employees and the FDA, CDC, HHS, and more. And RFK, Bobby, you got your hands on those, my man? All documents and communications sent or received by Dr. Philip Dormitzer, is that dude in Canada? Someone needs to get eyes on him. Or relating to the reporting of the data of the clinical testing all the way from March 20 to 21 November. And please provide these documents as soon as possible, but no later than the end of the month, May 29th. If you have any questions, contact our office, your friend, Jim Jordan. So another letter from the Judiciary Committee. We would like to see those emails. We watched that happen. We know what they did. The whole thing was an operation, and it backfired on them. Trump's back in charge and making America great again as this dude and these people are fleeing to Canada. Bye, but don't expect to be there for long once the indictments are filed. All right, so my friends, what a beautiful stream it has been and a beautiful day. If you're just joining us, thanks for joining us. If you're looking for any Supreme Court stuff, we did a much longer stream this morning, listening to the whole arguments, and then we wrapped up at the end with some thoughts on what the opinion will be when it finally comes down. But we had a great stream today, and we're very grateful that you're here. It's a little bit shorter, but we got some good stuff that we squeezed in today. Of course, we talked about James Comey, who is now saying he wants the 86-47. There was a lot of reaction to that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more reaction to that. Fox News is talking about it right now. And so there's going to be a lot more on that. But it was a real post from James Comey. Check out his Twitter, his Instagram account. You'll see it. Then we did some updates on Backdoor Dugan. She now has new dates, and they're actually ready for trial. It sounds like her attorneys are gearing up for trial, and they want to have jury questionnaires processed so they can get this thing moving. Now, we also got some new deadlines on that. We saw she pleaded not guilty, and there'll be more on that soon, no doubt about it. We also then talked about this whack judge from New Mexico who is now dismissing charges for illegal aliens who have ignorance of the law. Of course, if you claim ignorance of the law, you go to jail, get laughed out of court. But if they have ignorance of the law, their cases get dismissed sua sponte by federal judges. And of course, the jab cover-up now becoming a talking conversation again, courtesy of the Judiciary Committee. Hopefully there are repercussions. Hopefully we get to the bottom of Dr. Dormitzer's scandalous behavior. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. And thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the love and the support. Of course, Membos, we'll see you back here tomorrow on the members only morning stream, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Arizona time. Can't wait to see you back tomorrow on the members only stream. And YouTube Membos, stick around for the after party. You're going to have to go back to the channel homepage, refresh, grab the member stream once it goes live. But we'll say what's up to our YouTube friends in the members only after party. What's going on? We had some great comments coming in today. Courtesy of John and Donut. We appreciate you modding the fort down for us. Here's what we've got. Gary G. Welcome aboard, Gary G. Man, we're going to see some new membos on the after party on YouTube. Dan Johnson, what's up? Warren Pennington, great to see you guys. Hey, what's up, Molly Wright? Great to see you, Molly Wright. Thank you for the nice dono, Molly. No comment on it, but I really appreciate your support. Thanks for sending that in. Happy Thursday to you. Steel Manning says, what is the remedy if a judge illegally throws out a case? Well, you could appeal that. Like the government will appeal this. Yeah, they'll appeal these dismissals. And they could also refile, but I don't think they're going to be successful on that. Like it was the dismissal without prejudice, but they could refile and show that they had some notice or something, but the judge Yeah, I don't think so. I think they'll just appeal it. Just standard kind of appeal process. Larry Saccato. What's up, Larry? Thank you, Larry, for becoming a member. See you on the after party. What's going on? NTX Nancy. Did Trump strip Comey credentials? FBI needs to clean house, man. I don't know. Does he have any security credentials at all? Because he's now threatening the president. Absolutely nuts. Thank you for that, NTX Nancy. What's up, Benny boy? 1 month as a member. First month's the hardest. Gets easier from there, Benny boy. Says no one is above the law except judges, illegals, Hunter Biden, Hillary Clinton, Democrats. Yeah. Everyone else just gets abused by our own government, but they can just run free and do whatever they want. Thank you, Benny boy. Hey, Felix de la Cruz on Rumble says, rear exit fun Dugan. Lots of different permutations of backdoor Dugan. Thank you for all of those, Felix. Hey, what's up? Steph D, 14 months as a member. Thanks for joining us, Steph D. 14 months says, after the day I had, I really needed this stream. Well, hopefully it's going to just be all gravy from here, Steph D, and much better. It's good to get those days out of the way. Good news is tomorrow's brand new. You have a fresh new day coming up soon. Old lady says, hey, still need some prayers for my son's healing. We are starting to see some positive sign. Thank God and your prayers. Sending them your way, old lady, for your boy. And we're glad to see that there is some progress. Lots of healing love and healing prayer coming to old lady and her boy. T-Shot, what's up? Hey, Robert, great show this morning and tonight. Thank you, T-Shot, for hanging with us. It was a good day. We'll see what SCOTUS does. It's fun. It's my honor. It's an honor to be able to hang with you. Thanks for hanging with us, T-Shot. Hey, Don Goff, 15 months as a member, says, Roadrunner with his I never studied law sign running up and down the border. I never studied law. Or he could just say, I guess everybody could say that. I don't know what the law is. So, what, drinking and driving is illegal? Since when? I guess, Your Honor, he didn't know. It's like, why didn't I think of this, man? Could have just said, Your Honor, all my clients were illegal aliens who had no idea what they were doing. And this judge says that they can get away with it. Thanks, Judge. Don Goff, what's up? Rub some dirt on it. Says, hey, make sure Rob gets this. This is perfect for the data sets being maintained on the lodges. This is from E. Texley. Archive.js online blog news. That sounds great. Yeah, in our cards on the lodge. Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for flagging those things. We want to add that good stuff to the lodge. So that sounds awesome. Appointed judges in her circuit. We'll check that one out. Felix de la Cruz says, judge is becoming the cop, the judge, and the executioner. What a DJ Turd Ferguson. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they're the president now, too. Judges are the president now. And they control trade and foreign diplomacy and all the things. Hey, Linda Hunter. What's up, Linda Hunter? Says, God bless America and the rest of us Australians. I think in kangaroo. Is that a kangaroo? Our friends in the land down under? Good to see you, Linda. Dude, kangaroos are crazy, man. I saw a video of a kangaroo. I think it was like 8 foot tall. It's like claw. I'm like, dude, I think it'll mess you up. And it was looking at you too. It's like looking at you like, try it. No, well, I won't. No, you're in charge. Rick D, what's up? Eric says, just in. Homeland. Christy Nome says, disgraced former FBI director just called for the assassination of Trump. Homeland and Secret Service will be investigating this threat and will respond appropriately. Thank you, Rick D. Yeah, that was fast. Good to see you. What's up, Londo? Wakuka, Rob. That's how you say it. How long have you lived in Arizona? My whole life. Wakuka? I've never heard of that one. We've heard of Choya. A lot of people come in here and they get Choya wrong. They're like, I'll meet you on Chala Street. I'm like, okay, you're not from here. What's up, Doan? J6 protesters who accepted invitations into the Capitol by Capitol Police spent years in jail, but the aliens sneaking into military facilities just walked free. Well, they didn't know. Yeah, they didn't know, Doan. The J6ers who got tapped in the shoulders and invited in by the cops, they should have known that they were insurrecting American democracy. So solitary confinement for them. But the illegals, they just don't know any better. So don't be such a bigot also, okay? Because of bigotry. Whatever. It's ridiculous. Thank you, Doan. What's up, Sheila Poo? Well, this illegal willfully entered the U.S. unauthorized and willfully entered the base. Made the volitional decision to move the body from their country to ours. Whether they knew it was a base makes no difference at all. The willfulness is in the action, not the willfulness of the illegality of the action. Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples I think you can give here, but you don't get that same benefit applied to you in any other case. Think about how hard we had to fight for the 1512C charge that was made up. That was an Enron statute that was made up to wreck lives of American citizens. 1512C. Not even for it. Wrong charge. This is a military base. They went onto it. They willingly left their country. Everyone knows it's a military base. The judge is bending himself into a pretzel to disqualify all the charges because they love illegals. Felix de la Cruz. Activist district court judges are executioners of the law, the precedent, the Constitution, and common sense, every ruling that they make. Saying, illegal aliens willfully pay smugglers to enter the U.S. illegally. They willfully follow the smuggler through the smuggling route. They know that they will be going places they have no legal right to be. Yeah, they do know all of that. But according to the judge, should have been some more signs because it's not conspicuous enough. It's like, is that what you need? Is that you want some more signs up there, Judge? Flip Floopington. What's up, Flip Floopington? Says this judge is setting a dangerous precedent. Yeah, it sounds like ignorance of the law is now an excuse. This one came in from this old guy, says, OMG, the judiciary has collectively lost their friggin' minds. Just post signage at the border cautioning that this area is mined. I'll bet that adjusts some mens rea. Yeah, well, there's a lot of other things you could put at the border too. You know, like if you put like a minefield or something, or like a moat with alligators, right? And would that be enough warning or something? Like that's a different way to do it. Not encouraging any of that. I'm just saying, like, there's different ways. Could you fortify the border? Is that enough notice? It's a military base, so could you fortify it? Should we have some tanks out there? You want a minefield down there? You want some sniper nests out there to provide some actual notice there, Judge? What do you want to do? It's a military base. What else should we do? You want us to fortify the whole border? We're down for that. Like, we're down to fortify the whole border. We'll give plenty of notice, right, in the forms of aggressive deterrence. Jeffrey Adams says, just in, U.S. Attorney Alina Abba personally in court today prosecuting Mayor Ras Baraka for infiltrating an ICE facility. Yeah, I was keeping my eye on that one. I might want to get into that tomorrow. I saw her walking around with her shades, ready to take care of business. Jester Bob says, the judge said that not enough signs. The government says there are signs written in English and Spanish. The judge will then say illegals could not read the signs. Well, you have to teach them to read first. You have to teach them to read, then they can read the sign, and then only then can you charge them. We got signs every 10 feet, but they couldn't read them. Well, I guess that's our fault, Judge. Pinochet. Yeah, I believe the legal term is called strict liability, or in Latin, it's called ignorantia juris non excusant. Yeah, so strict liability is like, it doesn't really matter what you thought. If you did the thing, you did the thing. The thing that I think the place this shows up most is with, having relations with somebody who's underage. Well, I thought she was 18. Doesn't matter, dude. She's 16. I thought, doesn't matter. King Ginger, can you prove this alien is literate? Can you? This is insane. That's hilarious. You are one step ahead of me, King Ginger. I know. Has he passed a reading proficiency exam? Well, then he didn't have notice of this. It's like, oh my gosh. Anything else, Judge? You want to see his diploma? Hey, here, what's up? Will Crump. SCOTUS shot down nationwide injunctions that followed Heller and Bruin, and they shot down Biden's ATF. So why are they now okay with it? Why is it okay to usurp Article 2? Well, it's because Trump, obviously, and democracy. And they've got a lot of friends who they want to be in good graces with at their cocktail parties. Thank you for the dono, Will. Rob says, do the signs have to be in the person's language? Yes, it must be in languages of 190 countries, and everybody from Trinidad and Tobago and all the other places must have their language specifically delineated there, or else they can't know. Dialects, languages must be clearly marked and understood. Otherwise, there will be no way to charge them. Hey, what's up? Are you kidding me? This came in from James Comey. Is this a joke? What's up? Sandy, so Comey, did he post something else on his thing? Are you kidding me? Earlier today, I posted a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. He's an idiot. I can't believe it, right? We made that point earlier. He's just a moron? He was the FBI director and he doesn't know what 86 somebody means? This dude's a liar. He knows what he meant. He knows what it meant. He took it down. He sent a message and now he's walking it back. Or he's just a total moron. I mean, it's either way, it's hard to understand. Hey, Christy Nome says, a disgraced former FBI director, James Comey, just called for the assassination of Trump, says Christy Nome. Homeland and Secret Service will be investigating this and will be doing that quickly. Lil Kim Jong says, James Comey, bad man. He number 10. Thank you, Lil Kim Jong. Felix De La Cruz. What's up, Felix De La Cruz? Says, Judge Vermouth Warmoth just gave every smuggler and illegal alien an open corridor until it's reversed. What a buffoon. Sheila Poo. I'm so sick of letters from Congress. I want to see some action. They should focus on codifying some of these executive orders into law. That would be nice for Congress to do really anything. Jim Jordan's really good at letters, though. We've read so many of them here. Tons. A lot. Thank you, Sheila. Doan says, those jab scams screams for justice from A to Z. Yeah, all those dudes knew what they were doing. And now they're fleeing to Canada? Not so fast. Thank you, Doan. Deluxe Knight, what's up? Says, Rob, it is totally ridiculous that the judge is dropping those military base charges. They didn't know? Boo-hoo. They knew they were entering our country illegally, which is why the first law they broke. Why they did that. Pusa. Thank you for that, Deluxe Knight. I agree with you. Felix De La Cruz says the Dormitzer, the guy who's leaving, the doctor so-called, should know that anything you say can and will be used against you. He's suffering from poop in the mouth. Now, the heart is the wellspring of the heart. Felix De La Cruz, it's true. Spud says, playing the show on both Rumbles and the same time is like listening to Rob in a tunnel or imitating Lou Gehrig. Yeah, sounds like an exciting experience, Spuds. Thanks for sharing that. I don't know. That sounds like a wild time. Are you tripping on something? Okay, be safe. Harold Greer, what's up, Harold Greer? Evie Loves You is gifted a membo. Only Grants is here. Gail Marie, welcome. McQueen is here. What's up, Vincent Martin? And Annie LP, gifted membos, courtesy of Harold Greer. Thank you, Harold, for doing that. Doan is here. Says, Rob, put Fauci's cases in the States on your docket. That guy has a super tanker of innocent blood on his hands. Over on the lodge. Here on this case, for this show, cases on the States docket. Do you have a good one? I've not seen those. Do you have a good one? Hey, Dan says, what about the locals people? It just dies? No. So locals, I'm going to give you some instructions at the end. Locals, you don't go anywhere. Locals, nothing changes for you. There's going to be a slight black screen, and then it'll be back. We tried it yesterday, and everything worked, I think, perfectly. So thank you, Dan. Locals, you don't go anywhere. YouTube members, you're going to have to go back to the main channel homepage, get a separate stream, but locals, friends, just hang tight. Elf, what's up? Thank you, Elf, for bringing in 10 new membo friends. Amazing to see him here. What's up? It's our right. We got Sherry Lawlessness is here. Frank Vecchione. Tyler Lee's Collecting Cats. Princess Papercut. What's up, Dan? Robert Tomlin is here. Sir Ghost coming in. Cold Cut Play. All gifted membos, courtesy of Elf. Thank you, Elf, for doing that. And welcome, new friends. This one from It's Heim Time. What's up, Mikhail? Bringing in 5 new membos. Tammy Green, welcome. Buster Ellis, Chris Capaho, welcome. Cheryl Elkins and Estewa Annie is in the house. Welcome aboard. Thank you, Mikhail. It's Heim Time, bringing in 5 new membo friends. Larry, yeah, we knew all of this, but to see it is crazy. Yeah. To see the email of that guy like, I have to go to Canada. Why? I can't talk about it, but I got to get relocated. Wild. Thank you, Larry. Real life, 21 months as a membo. Hey, Rob, what sovereign protections are we afforded under the Alien and Enemies Act? Can we open the old German prisoners of war camps? I don't think so. I think a lot of that was pretty repudiated in the, what case was that? The Japanese internment camp cases, a lot of that was repudiated by the Supreme Court. So we're not going to go back to those same types of, I think, abuses that FDR did. But certainly, if you think you're designated as an alien enemy, you've got the right to claim to, I think, be taken off like a foreign terrorist organization list in D.C. You can, of course, petition for habeas corpus if you're rounded up. Stuff like that. Jerome Lambert, what's up? Hey, Rob, dog the doggone. Oh, Dugan, throw her in jail, says Jerome. Great to see you, Jerome. Yeah, hopefully she pays consequences for her crimes. New Earth blog. What's up, Rosalie DeGregory? Great to see you. Thank you for becoming a member. We'll see you shortly in the after party. Felix de la Cruz. Sea bass with lasers. Yeah. Hey, chat with me, Rob. You just don't understand. Citizens of other countries believe all Americans have guns and jet planes and tanks and all of the paraphernalia of the military, and that we all walk around in uniform all the time. There was no way to know he was on a military base. Yeah. I wish we did all have tanks and airplanes and stuff. That'd be cool. Thank you, chat with me. Benny Boy, what's up, Benny Boy? Rob, can't you have transfer of content on trespass? Transfer of content on trespass? Are you talking about maybe transfer of like mens rea? So like it would transfer from, I would say it's the willfulness is the willfulness to be where you are. Like, do you have a willfulness to be where your body is right there? The fact you didn't know is a military base is not our problem. That's your problem. The border's clear. So I would say the willfulness mens rea would apply to all of that. I think that might be what you're asking. Thank you for that one, Benny Boy. Hey, Dean Paparella, 1 month as a member. First month's the hardest, gets easier from there. They cross barbed wire to ignorantly enter a base. Yeah, well, I guess I don't know. Maybe they thought that they were entering a Papusa Carniceria or something like that in El Salvador. I don't know. Military, this is weird. I'm innocent. Well, they still got that one charge about entering the country illegally, but the judge dismissed the other two because illegals are better than all of us. They get more privileges, more rights, stronger presumption of innocence, due process. It's the premium experience of being in America. Be illegal. Do whatever you want. Hey, Jen Griffin says, no, James Comey doesn't currently have security clearance. He lost it after being fired in 2017. Trump said he may not be able to have it reinstated. That's good news. Good to see that. What's up? Norman Lee Smith Music. James Comey has really shown his true colors today. Lock him up. Good to see you, Norman Lee Smith Music. Check out that music. James Pepper, what's up? Says a lot of beaches are under surveillance with cameras. Just saying we might be able to see him assembling this thing. Oh, yeah. I want to know, did James Comey make that up? Somebody should dig into that. I think he made that up. He didn't just come across a sign. Give me a break. Hey, John Cobb, Dugan's new motion to dismiss says, I didn't know it was illegal to let people out the back door. That's great. Oh, that's funny. Jeffrey Cornish, good to see you. I only got 4. Then a few months later, I fought off and I fought it off in my own immune system. That's great to see you. Yeah, what's up, TJ King? Yeah, here's another one. This is a Rush one. Funny. Regarding Comey's rocks, remember when Rush Limbaugh mocked Clinton's D-Day photo op where he acted surprised when he came upon a neat staged pile of rocks, then proceeded to arrange them in the form of a cross? Clinton's like, let me pay homage to our fallen soldiers, whatever. And then he goes back and smokes a cigar. All right. So my friends, thank you for saying what's up on X. Great to see you over there. Thanks for the great comments and the fun. Rub some dirt on it. Rub some dirt on it's been ripping on me for, all my hobbies that end up on the treadmill one after another. He says, I saw that glint in your eye to have airplanes and tanks, but how are you going to fit all that in your closet with your jujitsu gi, your treadmill, your grow kits for plants and vegetables, and all the other things? I don't know. We'll make room. I'll have to just get a bigger closet, I guess. Not worried about that. Rub some dirt on it. Plenty of space to fill up with foregone hobbies. My friends, it has been a beautiful stream today. Thank you so much for hanging with us this morning and back here on the evening. We will leave it there on the day. We'll pause for the evening. We'll retire for the night, and we'll come back tomorrow to get into it again. Before we wrap it up on the day, I want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths who mod the fort down for us and keep things nice and orderly. Our friends K Bean, Carrie B, Donut Mind Me, Janek, Dog Digger, John, we'll leave John. John, shout out to John. Thank you, John, for helping out. Elliot Dockmaster, Just Rhonda, and Jigam Geegam, our purveyor of fine memes, all in the house, keeping things nice and orderly on the day. But we'll leave it there. Okay, so membos, stick around. YouTube membos, you're going to have to go to the channel homepage because in about 2 minutes, there's going to be a new members only stream. There's going to be instructions on the next screen. We'll see you there. Locals, friends, hang tight, and we'll see you back for the after party. Otherwise, my friends, if we don't see you there, we are coming back tomorrow. We're going to get into it again. And in order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.